Welcome to Think About It podcast, where
Yes.
we say some things and nothing in itself is a fact and finite except for the Word of God. Everything is all relative, and all we're asking you to do is think about it.
Okay. Today we're going to talk about loving hard. A lot of people say they love hard, but is it healthy?
Hard love.
Because, when you're really in love, it's not supposed to feel like you're in survival mode. It is not supposed to feel like you're anxious or exhausted or constantly wondering if you're enough. So, that's what we're here to talk about. We love hard, but is it healthy?
Well, not that I beg to differ, but I have a bit of perspective, right? Because one of the fruits of the Spirit, when talking about love or exhibiting love in a relationship, is long suffering. And long suffering simply means self control. But how do you get to practice long suffering or self control if there isn't conflict inside a relationship? Not to say that there should be or that any parties involved should want to incite conflict purposefully. However, because we're not perfect, things do come up, right? Things do happen. Now, the question is, how do you handle that? Do you handle it from a blaming standpoint, which maybe even rightfully so, you do have, or rather, you're in the position to point the finger and place blame because of an infraction caused by someone else? But also, now, do you also look at it as a means to practice self control or emotional control, or what we say today, emotional intelligence?
That's a good point because yeah, conflict should come about, but or not should, but conflict
Well,
is going
inevitably,
to
yeah.
come about, right? The one thing that's constant about change is that it's changing. So the same thing with conflicts. Nothing is perfect in a relationship. However, there's a difference between conflict and chaos, right? A difference between conflict and confusion. And a lot of us confuse chaos with passion. Oh, it's crazy. He's crazy in love, or I am crazy in love. And that more speaks to toxic than really to conflict and resolution and practice of long suffering.
Well, some people actually do like the idea of being in a toxic relationship. You know, they say it all the time. It's even a part of the cultural lingo these days where people are like, oh, I'm in a toxic relationship or I'm in a toxic situationship, but I love them, but they hurt me. And we can do a bunch of cliches, right? Hurt people. Um, but some people actually find comfort in being with someone who shows them good times and bad times. And even though the bad times outweigh the good, when you weigh the pros and cons, they still find some comfortability being in bad times.
And that again drives the point of confusion, right? We confuse, like, oh, drama with some kind of depth in a relationship, right? So your relationship doesn't have to be drama filled or confusing or chaotic for it to be passionate.
Now, that's all, again, back to our point of this whole show about thinking about it, right? It's all relative. Now, who determines that? Who decides that? Do both people in a relationship decide it together? Is that an individual thought? Because there are people who they don't feel loved without adversity, and there are some people who doesn't want any form of adversity. They just want to have a smooth sailing relationship. Now, I'm not saying that that's not a realistic goal or desire. However, not also harping on the fact that situations that come about are inevitable. However, some people need it, crave it, want it. Oh, you don't love me unless you're yelling at me. You don't love me unless you're mad at me. You don't love me unless dot 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 inject negative here, right? And there's some people who want nothing to do with that. However, they find themselves in love with someone who is just like that? How do you determine who is in the wrong or who is in the right? Or do I then say to myself, I fell in love with the wrong person because what they're offering isn't what I'm seeking, even though I like them, even though I love them. Or I fell in love with the wrong person because they want me to change, but this is just who I am. This is just how I am.
Yeah, and for that, if I'm in that situation, I tend to really ask myself some questions, right? So the thing that we really have to do is really some self searching and just really get to know who you are, right? You have to ask yourself, are you loving the person with your wounds? Are you loving them with wisdom, right? Are you loving them with the wounds of your past? Or are you loving them with and in wisdom, right? Are you addicted to intensity? Like, I want this relationship to be intense. Or do you want intimacy? Because that's something different, right? So,
Are you addicted to intensity?
right? Or are you interested in building intimacy, right? Because your heart, ladies, men, your heart really deserves better than dysfunction in disguise.
Well, a lot of people live their lives walking forward. Their bodies are facing forward, but their heads are facing backwards, right? And the idea is that I'm heading towards something, but I like to look at what has happened and use that as a judge for how I'm going forward. Now, my thing is, if I'm driving my car to a destination, but I'm not periodically checking the side view mirrors and the rear view mirrors, I have my head turned completely in the opposite direction to the back, but my foot is on the gas. How can I tell where I'm going? Some people like to see the future from the past perspective. Some people like to look at what has happened and call that their present and their future. And a lot of that comes from an unforgiving spirit because I can predetermine what's going to happen in the future based on what has happened in the past, which means that there's no room for change, which means that I already believe the worst. Nothing good is going to come of this, but yet I'm still taking the journey with that person. How does that make sense?
Well, guys, and that's what you'll hear from us today. This is our first episode. Please check us out on YouTube at ENW Berg, where we will be releasing the full videos. Think about it.
Have a blessed and productive day.
Peace.